The first night you eat dinner alone in your apartment without turning on the TV or scrolling through your phone, the silence will feel like a physical presence. At first, it will unsettle you. You'll find yourself reaching for distractions like a reflex, your fingers twitching toward your phone to check notifications that aren't there, your ears straining for sounds that don't come. This discomfort is the beginning. What feels like loneliness is actually the first layer of an armor you didn't know you were forging. The modern world has conditioned us to fear these empty moments, to treat solitude like a disease needing immediate cure through social media, streaming, or compulsive busyness. But in that untouched silence lies an extraordinary opportunity, the chance to meet yourself without the filters of performance, without the masks you wear for coworkers, friends, even family. As the days pass, you'll notice something unexpected happening. The silence that once felt oppressive begins to feel like space. Vast open territory where your thoughts can stretch out to their full length. Without the constant input of other people's voices, you start hearing your own with startling clarity. That critical inner monologue you've carried for years, you begin questioning whose voice that really is. Is it truly yours or an accumulation of every dismissive comment, backhanded compliment, or parental expectation you've absorbed like a sponge? In this aloneness, you gain the distance to examine these borrowed beliefs, to hold them up to the light and decide which ones deserve keeping. This is where emotional independence takes root, not in some grand moment of revelation, but in these quiet instances of discernment that no one witnesses but you. The transformation happens gradually, like the changing of seasons. One morning you'll wake up and realize you didn't dream about your ex last night. Another day you'll catch yourself humming while doing dishes, perfectly content in your own company. Small victories accumulate. The first time you decline an invitation not out of fear, but from genuine preference for solitude. The afternoon you spend reading in the park without once feeling self-conscious about being alone. The growing ability to sit with difficult emotions instead of immediately reaching for someone to soothe them. These are the milestones of your private revolution. What makes this strength so potent is its authenticity. When you learn to comfort yourself through anxiety attacks instead of frantically calling friends, when you become the steady hand that guides you through depression's fog, when you celebrate your achievements without needing someone else's validation to make them real, this is strength that can't be faked or borrowed. It's earned through countless invisible battles fought in the quiet of your own mind. The beautiful paradox is that once cultivated, this self-sufficiency makes your relationships richer. You stop clinging to people out of need and start choosing them from a place of wholeness. Your connections become intentional rather than desperate, generous rather than grasping. This is the hidden gift of having no one, the opportunity to discover that you are, and always have been, enough. Not as some trite affirmation, but as a lived reality, hard-won and battle-tested. The person who emerges from this crucible of solitude carries an unshakable center, one that can withstand life's inevitable abandonments, betrayals, and losses because its foundation isn't built on shifting sands of external approval, but on the bedrock of self-knowledge. The microwave clock reads 2:37 a.m. when you first understand what it means to be truly alone. Not the performative solitude of Instagram-worthy coffee shop visits, but the raw, unfiltered aloneness where the only heartbeat you hear is your own. Your fingers hover over your phone's contacts list, that modern talisman against loneliness, before you consciously set it aside. This small act of resistance against your conditioning is where your transformation begins. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's pregnant with possibility. Scientists call this the resting state network, the brain's default mode when freed from external stimuli. What feels like boredom is actually your psyche's workshop, where the most profound self-reconstruction occurs. As the nights accumulate, you begin noticing subtle shifts in your interior landscape. The anxious thoughts that used to send you scrambling for distraction now pass through you like weather systems, observed but not owned. Psychologists call this metacognition, the ability to think about your thinking. It's in these unobserved hours that you develop what Viktor Frankl called the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose your response to any given circumstance. Without the constant chatter of others' expectations, you start distinguishing between what you genuinely desire and what you've been conditioned to want. That career path, that relationship pattern, that self-image, are they truly yours or hand-me-down identities you've worn without questioning their fit? The physical manifestations of this journey often surprise people. You might wake up one morning and realize your shoulders don't hunch forward defensively anymore. Your breathing becomes deeper, as if making space for the person you're becoming. Even your walk changes. Less hurried, more deliberate. These are the somatic markers of a psyche learning to occupy its full territory. Researchers at Harvard have found that just 15 minutes of daily solitude can reduce cortisol levels by 27%. But what they can't quantify is the tectonic shift in self-perception that occurs when solitude moves from punishment to practice. Your relationship with time transforms radically. Previously measured in social media scrolls and back-to-back meetings, time now expands and contracts according to your internal rhythms. You rediscover the forgotten art of lingering. Over a book passage, a sunset, a thought. This temporal reorientation reveals one of solitude's greatest gifts, the dissolution of FOMO, fear of missing out, and its replacement with JOMO, joy of missing out. The German philosopher Heidegger argued that authentic existence requires being toward death, the conscious awareness of mortality that clarifies priorities. In your solitude, you develop your own vernacular version, being toward self, where every choice is measured against the question, does this align with who I'm becoming? The mirror becomes an unexpected ally in this process. At first, you might avoid it, not from vanity, but from the discomfort of sustained self-observation. Then comes the day when you meet your own gaze without flinching. Neurologists would say your default mode network has integrated with your salience network. In simpler terms, the you observing and the you being observed have reached détente. This moment often coincides with what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming an undivided whole. Your dreams change during this period. They become more vivid, more symbolic, as if your subconscious is finally getting the bandwidth to communicate. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung would say this is your shadow material surfacing, all the disowned parts of yourself clamoring for integration. Where you might have once dismissed these nocturnal messages, you now keep a dream journal, recognizing these as communiques from your deepest self. The body's wisdom reveals itself in unexpected ways. You notice how certain foods make you feel, not just physically, but emotionally. That third cup of coffee doesn't just jangle your nerves. It makes your thoughts skitter like stones across water. Alcohol, once a social lubricant, now feels like a thick curtain between you and your clarity. Your body becomes a finely tuned instrument, registering subtleties you previously drowned out with noise and distraction. Financial behaviors shift dramatically. The impulse purchases, those little hits of dopamine from online shopping, lose their appeal when you're no longer trying to fill emotional voids with objects. You develop what economists call hyperbolic discounting, the ability to delay gratification not through willpower, but because your present self feels sufficiently nourished. Your spending habits become a mirror of your internal state, intentional, considered, aligned. Your creative impulses awaken with startling intensity. That guitar gathering dust in the corner suddenly calls to you. The notebook you bought years ago finally finds its purpose. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's concept of flow, that state of complete absorption in an activity, becomes your frequent companion. What's remarkable isn't the output quality, though that may surprise you, but the process itself, the pure, unself-conscious engagement with creation. This is creativity stripped of performative expectations, made sacred by its very privacy. Your spiritual life, whether traditionally religious or resolutely secular, undergoes quiet revolution. The questions that once felt abstract, what's my purpose, become urgent and personal. You develop rituals without realizing it. That particular way you make tea in the morning, the route you walk at dusk, the album you play when needing to reconnect with yourself. Anthropologists would recognize these as personal ceremonies, the kind that traditional societies use to mark transitions, except yours mark the passage from one self to another. Relationships transform from the inside out. You stop keeping score in friendships, who texted last, who remembered birthdays. The people who remain in your life are those whose presence feels additive rather than necessary. Most surprisingly, you become comfortable with conflict, not because you seek it, but because your fear of abandonment no longer outweighs your commitment to authenticity. Your no becomes clean and unapologetic. Your yes, wholehearted and present. The world begins to look different through your solitude-tempered eyes. You notice the desperation in others' status seeking, the anxiety in their constant connectivity. Where you might have once judged, you now feel compassion, recognizing their journey as a mirror of your former self. This is perhaps solitude's greatest alchemy, the transformation of loneliness into compassionate connection, the paradox of feeling most joined to humanity when standing firmly in your own sovereignty. The seasons turn, and with them, your understanding of strength. What began as survival, enduring the initial pangs of loneliness, has matured into something far more powerful, the ability to be your own sanctuary. You realize this isn't the end of the journey, but the beginning of a lifelong conversation with the most fascinating person you'll ever know, yourself. And when life inevitably brings both connection and loss, you'll carry this hard-won knowledge like a talisman, that no matter who comes or goes, you will always have you. There comes a morning when you wake to sunlight streaming through your curtains and realize with quiet astonishment that the gnawing ache for external validation has dulled to a whisper. The bed feels neither too large nor too empty, just yours. This is the secret threshold few talk about, when solitude stops being something you endure and becomes the sacred ground where you finally meet yourself without apology. You brew your coffee slowly, savoring the ritual rather than rushing through it to get to some imagined, more important moment. The steam rising from your mug carries the revelation that this ordinary morning, is the destination you've been chasing all along. Your reflection in the bathroom mirror holds new dimensions now. The lines around your eyes no longer strike you as flaws but as evidence of laughter you've earned, tears you've survived, thoughts that have shaped you. Neuroscientists would say your default mode network has rewired itself. Poets would say you've made peace with your own gaze. When you catch yourself smiling at nothing in particular, you recognize this as the most subversive act of all. Joy uncoupled from circumstance, happiness that demands no witness. The books on your shelves take on new significance. Those self-help manuals about fixing yourself gather dust, while the dog-eared novels and collections of poetry move to the front. You understand now that what you needed wasn't transformation, but revelation, the slow uncovering of who'd been there all along. Your playlist changes too. Fewer songs about heartbreak, more about discovery. The music that really moves you now are the instrumental pieces that leave space for your own thoughts to dance. Meals become meditation. Where you once ate standing up or scrolling, you now set the table, for one, with the same care you might show an honored guest. The Japanese concept of ichiju sansai, one soup, three dishes, takes on new meaning when prepared not for presentation, but for personal nourishment. You notice how the tartness of a tomato bursts differently when you're truly present to taste it, how the crunch of vegetables speaks in a language you finally understand. Your relationship with time becomes fluid and generous. That hour you used to kill waiting for a text now stretches like a vast savanna. Time enough to sketch, to journal, to simply sit with the symphony of your neighborhood sounds. The watch your parents gave you sits in a drawer more often than not. You're learning to tell time by the light's angle on your walls, by the rhythms of your own energy. Historians might call this natural time, the way humans experienced days before industrial clocks fractured our attention. When you do choose company, the interactions feel different. You no longer laugh at jokes that aren't funny or nod at opinions you don't share. Your silences become comfortable rather than anxious. Your contributions more considered. Psychologists call this differentiation, the ability to stay connected to others without losing connection to yourself. The friends who remain are those who don't fear your authenticity, The ones who drift away leave space for relationships that fit who you're becoming. The final revelation comes like a slow sunrise. You realize the person you've been waiting for, the one who was supposed to complete you, rescue you, make you feel whole, was here all along. Not as some perfect, finished product, but as this work-in-progress self that knows how to sit with pain, savor joy, and show up for life unarmored. The strength you've discovered isn't the absence of fear or loneliness. It's the certainty that you can hold yourself through them. And so when the world comes knocking again, as it will, with its demands and dramas, you'll open the door not from need, but from choice. You'll love more deeply because it's no longer a lifeline. You'll create more boldly because the work itself is the reward. You'll live not as an apology, but as a declaration. This is the gift of having no one, the breathtaking discovery that you are always enough.